Why did you start Atimotors?
So this question is difficult to answer because you start because you're a serial entrepreneur, you keep starting companies. The reason probably is because I think one of my co-founders is Saurabh Chandra, and he had just exited one of his companies, and he was looking for something new to do. He started spending time here, and we knew each other via Twitter and so on. So he used to come here once or twice a week, started doing some things, and at some stage we thought we should start a company together, and Atimotors started. It was a natural evolution of a friendship in some sense.
How did you triangulate on the problem that you're trying to solve for Atimotors?
I think one idea was to do something. I think one question that keeps repeatedly coming up is where are the technology companies in India? So you probably have a lot of e-commerce companies and other companies, not that they don't have technology, but these are not necessarily being driven by cutting-edge technologies per se. So I had some prior experience of doing that in both Strand Life Sciences and Gigabitars. And the question was, and I had crossed 50. So my personal challenge was that I have enough to do one more technology company. Saurabh was much younger than I am. And his thing was, why can't we actually do a deep technology company? And yeah, that's how it started. So we said, okay, so autonomous vehicles were interesting. And so within autonomous vehicles, we can't compete with the Teslas as well because that requires very deep pockets. And so consequently, we said, let's look at something that typically people in the US will not look at, which was cargo vehicles of small factor. So if you look at US companies working in cargo, they'll probably build a 10-ton truck or something like that, which they'll make autonomous. We wanted to see if we can actually build something which is typically Indian. We wanted the vehicle to be maneuverable, which would be able to go through narrow lanes, for example. Since it's an Indian, it probably should be a three-wheeler, because that's what gives it the maneuverability. Yeah, so those were the ideas. And these ideas are not just about India, this is about old world. So not just in India, but even in Europe. So if you go to Italy or France or something, much of the world, or even the Far East, typical old world scenarios have narrow streets. That's how, for example, Italy is where the scooters started, right? And the scooters came about because of a specific requirement. Our requirement, I think, was, if you looked around, you will see TVS 50 with somebody carrying some 500 kgs on their TVS 15 going on the market, probably to their shop or something like that. So that was the motivation. Can I actually build a three-wheeler which can actually do something interesting?
Why is this problem so hard to solve? And what sort of technology is involved in building this out?
So typically, I think companies focus on one type of engineers. What I liked about the cargo vehicle is something that has come from my previous startup that I had, which was JEDI, which stands for Joy of Engineering, Innovation and Design. So we actually spent a lot of time with engineering students, trying to give them the confidence of building products and so on. One of the things that we learned early on is that, especially from the Simpler project, there's one learning that I took from that is that if you're developing a product, you have to have multiple disciplines. You have to be, it's not enough to be good at just one discipline. So if you look at Atimotors, I have a team of mechanical engineers. We built the we built the product ground up. So for example, we took the assumptions that typical vehicles have, and we said these are not our assumptions. Our vehicle does not have a cabin for the driver, for example. So those things said three-wheelers because we wanted a certain maneuverability in design. So this questioning assumptions means that you have to build things from first principles. So our mechanical team does that. We have a power electronics team, which is fairly large. We have over 10 members in the power electronics team. We have an autonomy team, which has about a dozen people. I also collaborate with IAC on the autonomy stack, some parts of it. We have a control team, which looks at the controls that's required. Eventually, the vehicle has to run, it has to figure out what has to be done. So that you require. You require people who write system software because they have multiple sensors. You don't know what these sensors are. I had not seen a LiDAR until 2 years back when we got the LiDAR here, right? And so you have to get those signals, you have to interface those drivers and so on. So that requires separate skills for doing that. Yeah, so across the board, I think, and then you require to know kinematics, you need to know dynamics of how the vehicle behaves. We need somebody who can actually, who's good at writing gaming software. So the entire the cargo vehicle that we have is actually simulatable completely inside a Unity platform, the gaming platform. So all of these skills are required. So it's not just one area or one aspect of it.
Are there technology developments outside that you continuously watch for, maybe in an institution like ISC, if you were to collaborate, what sort of things that deep tech startup can expect from such engagements? Do you have, because you have experience on both sides. So if some startup wants to engage an institution for specific needs, how do they go about it? How could they potentially leverage?
You're asking for the challenges of approaching academic institutes?
Challenges, maybe good things, maybe what could work out.
Well, I mean, this is not a good answer to give because maybe you'll edit it out. But really it is difficult. The problem of, so if you look at a university in the US, right? You can pick up MIT or Stanford or any of these universities or CME or something. What you'll typically find is that multiple people will work in the same lab. Multiple faculty will work in the same lab. That does not happen in India. The reason why it does not happen in India is because when you start a department, what you want is not to have more than, you want breadth in the department. So consequently you start hiring across for breadth, not necessarily for depth. In US it's very different. I've had several cases where there are teams of people who work and collaborate and write papers together. If one of them gets into a university, the other automatically gets a job in the same university. They move together. So they're like collaborators for life. It's as if they're married or something. So they keep moving from university to university. That doesn't happen anymore.
Let me put the question in a different way.
No, let me finish. So consequently what happens in India is that individuals start laboratories and they attract projects and capital for their this thing, but they do not collaborate across. Okay. Having spent now what, about 25 years post I joined IAC in 95. 25 years of experience, I can say that the Jupyter project was unique because it got 4 faculty members together to do something, to build something technologically interesting. And we all had different capabilities. All 4 of us. No 2 of us were alike. I haven't seen that again happening, not just in IAC, but anywhere in the country so far. Individuals have worked, but faculties have not come together to solve kinds of things.
Ideal institutional engagement with startups that you can think of and could IISc enable this change? That's the
So the best that we can therefore do is you can approach individual faculty members who are open to working with industry. That again is far and few. Okay? Because I think what is interesting for the industry to do is not necessarily interesting for academic to do, and vice versa. Okay? So there's a healthy skepticism on both sides. I would have said disrespect, but probably skepticism on both sides about what the other brings to the table. So that is an issue. But I think there are individuals. I think there are individuals everywhere who are interested in collaborating with people in the industry and so on. But they're far and few. I don't think it's across the board. I don't think you'll find that sort of possible. Even in IISc, despite the fact that I know several faculty members and so on, currently the only active member I'm engaged with is Chiru. We have tried to engage at least about half a dozen different faculty members, probably even within several faculty members, even across, even within CSA and so on, but it just doesn't happen. I think because, I mean, they have their own stuff to do, and would I like to collaborate with some of them? Absolutely.
Do you have a
Students, I think, obviously, I think Indian students, especially the master students who have come over the years, most of them, you are not, I assume that you guys are exceptions. I think they just come for better jobs, and they think that the final aim in life is to join a NVIDIA or a Google or something like that. Very few students are willing to be adventurous about their career. And the reality is that the first job, or maybe the first two jobs that people take up, matters. The first 5 years, wherever you spend, right, matters. When you spend those 5 years in very established companies, you'll learn nothing there. If you want to learn something, you have to get a startup. You have to be the early startup, because that's where all the excitement is. So for students, it's very easy to say that be a part of startup at least for the first 3 years of your career. And then you do whatever you want. You want to earn your money when you're 30, 35 or something, go join a multinational, earn your money, all that is fine. But learning happens in an environment which supports new ideas, not because you sit behind a desk and fix a bug or something. Industries are nothing much to say, right? I mean, the other industries like ours, they know what they are doing, we believe we know what they are doing. So I don't think there's any advice to be given to industry. Investors, I think Indian VC circles tend to be very conservative. They also tend to put money into projects which they know succeed. Very few Indian VCs are prepared to take bets on technology. So you will hear the phrase that we are prepared to take bets on business but not on technology. And that's partly the reason why India does not have deep technology companies, because nobody is willing to take those bets. Yeah, so some of that I think has to change. I mean, I can understand that they have to make returns to their LPs and so on. So yes, I mean, they will diversify, they will do all of that. But maybe 20% of what they do can be a bit more risky, and it could be a technology bet to see what happens. But unless that change happens, it's very difficult to build technology companies in the country. So there has to be a change in the way people think about it. That's all.
What has been the most exciting parts of this journey, of the Motors journey? What have you learned that you didn't know before?
Lots of things, I think,
Okay.
across the board.
Okay.
Right? As I said, I think probably gave you what 7 or 8 different areas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but as I don't know, I'm some sort of chief scientist or chief technologist. So I have to look at each of these pieces, which means that every day I'm learning something new which I didn't know the previous day. Okay, and this is not just concerning just my computer science, which is my background, but across the board. 5 years back, if you'd asked me what control theory I do, I probably I would have known something, but not deeply. Can I teach a control theory course for undergraduate level today? I can probably do that. Can I do a kinematics course or a mechanics course? I can do that. Yeah, so I think, yeah, so it's been exciting in terms of technology. I have a co-founder who is 17 years. When we started the company, he was 15. When he came to me, he was 11. When he came to me, he had finished a full course on cryptography on Coursera. He had taken, I think, a couple of courses on edX or Coursera on aerospace. He already had, I think, met Rodam Narasimha, who was the doyen of Indian space by that time. He had won a couple of Intel science fair awards and so on. Probably the year he met me, or maybe the year after something, he met Kalam and so on. So this is a kid who knows every aspect of engineering. It's extremely rare to find some 11-year-old or 12-year-old who can walk in and actually know so much. And I get to interact with him every day. That's exciting. That he's essentially the chief technologist of the company. He actually interacts with every group, and he's one of the few people who knows all 360 degrees of what's happening there and makes the mule work. So he looks at the system software, he talks to the power electronics people, he talks to the mechanical people, he talks to the autonomy stack. So he has contributions across the board.
So in a sense, it's these disciplines coming together to make one thing is what is very exciting.
Disciplines coming together. So there's a word that people use, which is unified engineering. And so this is a classical example of unified engineering. If you asked about 10-15 years back what is unified engineering, a good example would have been aerospace. You cannot build an aerospace product or something, so for example a plane, without knowing all aspects of engineering. It's not confined to any one area. So there again you need to be an electrical engineer, you need to be a mechanical engineer.
Control systems.
Control systems you require all aspects of engineering. Autonomous vehicles, I think today gives us that sort of flavor to unified engineering, which is not available in
other areas. So
that I think is the major.
Given that you're building something for the future, how do you tackle the uncertainty? How do you take bets on what next to do?
We're too early to take those bets because we're just 2 years old.
Okay.
What sort of bets are you thinking
Even the
about?
technology wise, I mean, if there's a battery, which battery should go? There are different kinds of batteries that are there, and what would
that evolves with time, no? Much of some of those decisions are driven by commerce. The economics of things will drive some of those.
The ecosystem
will dictate some of those things,
Okay.
right? So, for example, we use a LiDAR.
Okay.
There are people who say, why do we require a LiDAR? Can we not use a camera and be done? Can we use 2 cameras and be done? 5 cameras and be done? Can be done? Actually, yeah, probably they can. But there are these things called dark factories that are coming up, which means that the question to ask is, in any case, factories do not have too much of people in them nowadays. Can the factory be active in the night? Can I switch off the power and can it be active? That's a dark factory. With a LiDAR, I can actually, my vehicle can move around in a dark factory. I don't require anything.
Right.
Camera, on the other hand, requires light.
Right.
So some of these things come because of the nature of how the world is evolving.
So we are all students from MTech here, some of us, and majority of the audience for this video will also be students like that. So what do you think you would like to say to people who would like to start up themselves, who might have ideas and who are potentially looking at taking a risk to start up in the coming years?
I think couple of things. I think, of course, I mean, one part of starting up anything is that there has to be a demand for that product. So there is a business angle to it which you should take care of. Or either you have the talent, or you have to identify somebody who has a talent. Maybe tie up with people in management or something, and you require that skill to be able to go and market and so on. Okay, so that technology alone is not sufficient. Okay, so you require other skills as well. So it's usually good to be in a team of people who bring in all these complementary skills. Somebody is good at talking, somebody is good at projecting, somebody is good at marketing, somebody is good at technology. All of these have to come together. But since IAC is predominantly a technology place, I think as technologists, I think the question that most students don't ask is, they do not look at questions deeply. And until you start asking questions deeply, it's difficult, even if you have a startup, right? The experience of having asked questions deeply, I think, is very important. So people talk with first principles. So if you're not able to look at things and start answering those things using first principles, then I think it becomes very difficult to have a startup and be successful. We can go a long way using commodities that are already available. But when you get stuck, you won't know a way to get out unless you can start thinking and analyzing things from scratch.
Regarding the risk of starting up itself, is that something worthwhile for potentially a 21-year-old who's looking to start up?
Well, since I have a co-founder who started when he was 15-year-old, the answer would be yes, provided you know what you're doing. I would not. This is not. I don't think everybody can be a startup. This thing. Okay, so it's not for everyone. Is there any special gene for it? I don't think so. It is an attitude, and if you think that you can start something, I mean, it's finally a belief. Okay? And at 21, I think you have the innocence to actually try something. At 40, it's very difficult to start up. At 45 or something like that is not an age. I think an ideal age to start up would be about 25. Maybe 3-4 years after you graduate would be an ideal thing. So my co-founder also has the same thing. So he was, I think he passed out from IIT BHU. He worked for 3 years, then started his own company. He was there for 12 years and sold it at it did very well. Yeah. And then he has started this. He's now about 38 or something, 37, 38, and this is his second company. I have one successful exit. So yeah, around 25 and 30 is when I think it would be an ideal to start. At 30, I had just joined IISc as a faculty. When we started our companies, I was 35 or 36. But that, in some sense, was the earliest we could have done. But for you kids, I think between 25 and 30 is, I think.
The autonomous vehicles, do you ever, for example, in India, we all say that the roads are really bad for autonomous vehicles to come in. So what would you say to that? Like,
that's precisely the reason why we chose the cargo route. So we work on private campuses, okay, where we are not, the fact that our vehicle runs inside a factory, therefore does not require a license plate. We are not on public roads. Therefore we don't have to bother about navigation. the way autonomous vehicle has to follow navigation.
Uh,
Yeah, so you have to select. So autonomous vehicles will take some time to come because the regulatory frameworks have to be worked out. Right? So therefore, we took a bet on cargo vehicles simply because we are not part of public roads. We want to be part of private roads, okay, private campuses and so on. So that is the basic idea. So if you choose your area properly, where you want to work, then I think there are enough applications for AI, whether it's in healthcare, in education, for example. I would think in a decade or so we should have tutors who are just disembodied voices. Is there a need for a professor to actually stand and teach? Or, I think those days are done. And in any case, even when you talk to students, right? I've spoken to several people asking them what is it that they remember about their schooling, whether that's undergraduate or graduate, and so on. Most people cannot name more than 2 faculty members who influence them. Even if you are taking 6 courses this time, not more than 2 professors there will be teaching you interest or reasonably. Remaining 4 will probably find boring. It's just do the assignment and kind of that. So that's a big.
Sir, one of the questions that you brought addressed as soon as you came in was regarding ethics of AI. What are your thoughts on that? For example, do you think this wave of technology would replace jobs?
No, when your program came up, I was part of some committee
Okay.
in the department which actually was supposed to look at. So we were all asked to comment on the program. So one of my comments was that the problem in India is that engineers are not exposed to humanities. The consequence of that is that we don't ask questions that need to be asked. It's not enough to know, to just say that I have some knowledge of AI and I'm going to use it. If you're using it in healthcare, if you're using it in education, any of these things, right? It becomes important to ask what are your ethical boundaries that you will not cross. Right? And unless those things are sort of debated and taught and so on, students are not going to learn that. So that is a problem. So I think IIC should, since it started an AI program, it should at least have 10 or 20 or whatever, right? Make sure that students actually are challenged and they ask these questions. They have to think. That is, I think, the important part of it.
Sir, you're a serial entrepreneur and you've started several companies. 2 years back you started Atimotors. So if I could ask you, if you had not started Atimotors, which do you think is a very exciting area that you might have otherwise worked on?
I was working already in the education sector. It's because of this variety of factors, the 3 of us came together that we started Atimotors. But otherwise I would have continued in education. And probably, I'm hoping I'll get back to education maybe in another 5, 6 years.
And if the same question was to be, if a technologist from IIC asks you which area they should think about starting up, then what would you answer them?
No, that I think is very personal.
Okay.
I think each person will have their own likes and dislikes. I mean, to paraphrase you, each person has their own dreams of how to change the world. So they will figure out how to change the world. It's not for, it's a very personal choice that one has to make. It also depends on your strength, right? Yeah, so different people have different strengths. So you have to look into your strength and decide what you can.
So your advice would be to work on your strengths and look at your
Yeah,
strengths.
I mean, you have to look at it. I think, so I think my suggestion would be only 2 things. I think one, don't silo yourself into very narrow this thing. By definition, startups means that you have to be a generalist. It's impossible for you to be in a startup if you are good at only one thing. You have to be good at multiple things. So that's one part. I think, second, I think it's finding your strength. Despite all the facts that people say that look at your weakness and improve your, not going to happen. Okay, so get something that you are strong in. If you have a weakness, get somebody else who is a co-founder who is good at that. and make sure that overall you have a team that is good. So it's not individuals that will be good at everything, but you need to have a team that's good at everything.
It was a very nice talk. Thank you so much for the time. We took much more than we anticipated.
This is all MBA talking.